Imagine you start following some random curiosity, thinking it's like no big deal, and then it ends up teaching you one of your biggest lessons of your life. This is basically what happened to me, and it's totally wild how something so small can end up being such a big wake-up call for you. Hello and welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Jada, where I share my personal experience with you. In this video, we're going to dive into the story of how a total random book that wasn't even related to self-development ended up teaching me one of my biggest life lessons that still drives me today. So the book that I ended up reading that totally changed my life is the book called Story of My Life by Giacomo Casanova. If you don't know who Giacomo Casanova is, he's an Italian who lived in Venice around 1725 to 1798, something like that. And he was known to be a libertine, a very excessive man, a very intense man basically. And he wrote his autobiography when he was around 80, basically for himself, because he was bored, he didn't have the health and the vitality to enjoy life as he used to be, because he was the kind of person who would go full out and basically live life to an excess as well. So the term Casanova, when you tell someone, oh, he's such a Casanova, it actually derives from that person, from Giacomo Casanova, who lived at that time. So it wasn't actually a real person. And I was actually surprised to know, like when I talk to people about this, like how many people were not aware of the fact. But he was actually a real person. Like when you tell someone Casanova, it actually comes from a real person. So his autobiography was known to be one of the most scandalous books of the time, because he basically was describing all his relationships or love affairs that he had in quite some details. And if you're getting curious about the book, let me tell you a few things before you start reading it. First of all, the book, the autobiography, is about 6,000 pages long, so it's a very long book. He wasn't able to finish it. He was only getting to the age of 50, something around 50, but he ended up being around 80 years old. So he died before he could finish it. Another thing to be aware of is that he can be very tiresome. Like there are certain parts of the book that are basically boring, or at least I found them boring. But there are other parts that are very fun and entertaining and just hilarious. Also, the biggest thing to be aware of, it is a book that was written in the 1700s. So I didn't consider that. So some of the things when he describes them, they were rather confusing because I'm not used to that kind of language. So even when he described his love affairs, there was like moments where I was like, hold on a second, what did just happen? And he did just describe the whole act, but in a way that to modern readers, it's like, what? Because it was more implicit, like it was more implied than actually described. But for that time, it was super scandalous. But for today, it's just like, oh, okay, you just did that with that person. So if you're looking for something spicy, that's not the book. If you're still curious, I'm gonna link it down below so you can have a look at it. If you're interested in it, maybe it's something that you just want to read on the side every now and then. Now, besides all that it was extremely intriguing, especially because you were reading the story or the life from the perspective of a person from 300 years ago, it really was the book that started teaching me to look things from a different perspective. I still remember the moment when I started reading the book and it was still in the preface, like the book hadn't even started yet. And he made a comment which in one sentence, he basically destroyed the whole Christianity concept about chastity and, suffering and having to deprive yourself from the pleasures. Now I want to make one point very clear. This is not a video about the discussion whether the Christian church has a right approach or not. This is not it. This is about how me reading that sentence totally changed my perspective on life. So I'm gonna share with you this quote, and then I'm going to explain to you what this sentence actually did to me and how it changed me. So I just need to get my laptop up there because it's a longer sentence and I can't remember it in one go. So the quote goes as follows. I have always considered that God, who has given us our senses, desires and passions, has not meant for us to ignore or mortify them, but rather to enjoy them. Therefore, I have never believed that my indulgences, particularly in love, were offenses to the Creator. What I found really fascinating was the fact that he was extremely religious. Like, even when you read the book, he really believed in God and the Creator, but he also believed in the pleasure of life. But I just found it so interesting that he could be religious, like believing in a higher power, but also believing in life itself, that we came here to experience life. Now, while he was obviously talking about indulgences and, being able to live life to the fullest without feeling guilty, and he did a lot of morally questionable things, what he taught me with that sentence was that a human being is not meant to suffer. So before reading that phrase, I had this unconscious belief that if you do bad things, you're going to be punished for them, either in this life, in the afterlife, whatever you believe in. But there was this unconscious drive or belief of not wanting to be a bad person, and I believe that everything made me a bad person. So it installed in me the belief, I refuse to believe that a human being has to suffer like that. And this actually became essential later on in my life, about 5 years later from when I read the book, where I was going through a really, really tough time, and I mean really intense. So I was going through a lot emotionally, and it really took a toll on me. But this belief of I refuse to believe that a human being has to suffer, it gave me the strength of, on one side, not falling, or not even falling, but starting to take substances to escape reality, because reality was so intense that I couldn't handle it. So it gave me the strength to refuse on taking medications, drugs, alcohol, all of those kind of things to give you a temporary relief, but do not solve the problem. At the same time, it gave me the drive to look for solutions. Now, it took me about 3 years until I found the actual solution that worked for me, but without, and I'm 100% certain about this, without the belief that was installed in me in that moment, I wouldn't have been able to go through those years as I did. I'm very certain that I would have broken down, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know where I would have ended up if it wasn't for that belief. I refuse to believe that a human being has to suffer like that a human being was meant to live like that. And it still drives me today when there's something that I want to achieve or something that I'm struggling with it. It's still this belief of I refuse to believe that I have to live a reality where I'm suffering, and I know there is a way out of it, even if I haven't found it in the moment. But it gives me the tenacity, the endurance to go until I have reached whatever I want to reach. So this is how a total random curiosity of wanting to read the book of the biggest womanizer of history ended up teaching me one of my biggest and most valuable life lessons that still drives me today and is basically an essential part of my whole belief system. So let me know what you think. Even more so, I want to know if you had an experience like that, where you followed a total random curiosity and ended up teaching you an incredible life lesson. So if you liked the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.